Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am here to do an August update and a September TBR. Now, people who know me have known that I have moved from Washington to Virginia, and I am currently in an extended stay hotel while my house gets finished. We do not actually take possession of the new home until September 17th. So until then, I am in this hotel room. And the Wi-Fi speeds in this hotel room are really, really slow. But I am here, I am well, my wife is well, and my two cats are doing well, which is the most important thing. So here are the books that I read. I started off August with Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. Now this was an audio book, and I really enjoyed this. And it's actually quite a frightening book in many ways because of just what the evangelicals believe, and they are totally contrary to what I believe. The next book I read was an ebook. It is The Man Who Lived Underground by Richard Wright. Now, Richard Wright is more famously known for his novel Native Son. And that is one of the best books of the 20th, or the best novels of the 20th century. I've also read Wright's other main novel, The Outsider, which was very good. It is nowhere near as good as Native Son, but well worth your effort. Now, this novel, The Man Who Lived Underground, was written between those two novels, but never published. And it is a very different style of book. In both Native Son and The Outsider, the main characters in each of those books was a murderer. And in this book, it is a character who is accused of a murder that he did not commit, and escapes from a police station and basically lives underground for a while. I'm glad I read this book. I do not think it has the power and depth of his other two novels, though. If you're not familiar with his work, I would say you could probably skip it. But if you found his Native Son or The Outsider intriguing, go ahead and pick it up. The next book was an audiobook. It is I Alone Can Fix This by Carol Leon, and it is basically a history of the last days of Donald Trump. Last month I read the Michael Wolff book, which I called Political Pornography. This book is a little more serious. They do try to get the facts straight, the two authors of this book. I mentioned the first author, but I do not have the list of the second author handy. And again, it's the last days of the Trump administration, and just what a clusterfuck that was. I can highly recommend this. I doubt this book is going to change any minds, but I quite enjoyed it. The next book was I read as an ebook and listened to an audiobook at the same time, and that was Sanctuary by William Faulkner. This was a group read that was held on Voxer. It was quite a lively discussion. I am surprised that a book this old can meet those many views, and some of those views got quite heated. I won't go into the story of the plot, other than William Faulkner did intend it to be a potboiler, although it was his most revised book before he sent it to publication. So that's sort of an interesting bit of tidbits that what he actually wanted this book to be. Now, I did enjoy it. I will not rank it anywhere near as good as Sound and the Fury or Absalom or some of his other major novels, but it is well worth your effort. A lot of people in that group dislike this book immensely. And I can understand why they dislike it, because it describes scenes. Well, Faulkner does not actually describe the graphic scenes; they are only hinted at. But what he insinuates is quite revolting. And the main character, Popeye, is an evil man. But he is the type of evil man that is believable. He's not a Hannibal Lecter type of evil man, which you can sort of enjoy and root for his evil. You can't root for Popeye in any sense of the way. He is just a nasty human being. The next book was an Audible book, and it is a book that I've been reading since of September 2020. It is an anthology. It is The Black Lizard Big Book of Pulps. The best stories from the pulps during the golden age, the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s. This was a very long audiobook. It's more than 70 hours, and the book is like 1,100 pages. And it is just a collection of short stories. And with an anthology, you have some very good short stories and some not so good. I do rate this as an anthology pretty high. If you like pulp stories, absolutely pick this up. You don't have to read it, cover to cover. As I said, I took more than a year listening to these stories. I would finish one book on audio and then listen to a story or two and go to my next book. And that's how I completed this. So I did like it. It has some famous authors. It has Raymond Chandler. It has Dashiell Hammett. Has James M. Cain, and some other lesser-known stories. One of my favorite was a story of a man who wore a bubbled glass helmet over his head to conceal his identity. And he was basically a good guy robber who stole from the rich to give to the poor, very Robin Hood-esque, and not great literature, but very enjoyable. The next one I read was a buddy read with David Wiley, and this was The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. There are a lot of good short stories in this book. The first one, called The Veldt, is probably my favorite. It anticipates virtual reality very well for a book that was written in 1950. And it was enjoyable reading with someone and commenting every day. We read a short story a day and took 18 days. The next was a book I read for women in translation, and that is Human Acts by Kang. This is about an uprising in Korea that happened in the 80s, and it is basically divided into 5 parts and 5 narrators. Now, I do not know Korean history at all, but it's very interesting to try to get into these uprisings, and it makes me worried about this country, that we're going to have some violent uprisings with people dying, which was what this story was about. The next was an audiobook. Now, again, the purists are going to tell me this is not a book. This is actually a series of college lectures, but I read it or listened to it as I listened to all my other audiobooks, so I'm sort of counting as a book. And that is Cultural Literacy for Religion. Everything the well-educated person should know. And this is a basically broad landscape of all religions. It has Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and a couple other smaller religions. And it's just basically giving the general person a broad canvas of what that religion is like. Now, I like these courses, and even though I've taken individual courses on all the main religions from the Great Courses Company, I did enjoy this one. And as I said, broad canvas, you're not going to get any in-depth knowledge, but pretty good. The next was The Moving Target by Ross Mcdonald. And this is a short little mystery set in Los Angeles in the 40s. Now, when I was listening to this, I was basically packing up my house and getting everything ready to move. And it's the kind of book that you can listen to and work at these pretty simple tasks very easily. Now, it's the beginning of a Lou Archer series. I believe that series is very long. I think it's like 18 books long. I don't know how far I will go with this series. I probably will eventually get to book number 2. because they're available from Audible right now as a member of a subscriber's package. You get it for free and was well worth it. The next was The Warden by Anthony Trollope. And this was just a delightful little book. Again, it was audiobook narrated by Timothy West. And I was just amazed how much I enjoyed this book for something that was written so long ago, more than 100 years ago. It is the beginning of his Barchester Towers sequence. And I will be continuing with more Anthony Trollope. Next book I read was actually a reread. This was again an audiobook, Into Thin Air, a personal account of the Mount Everest disaster by John Krakauer. Now this is one of the finest works of journalism in the past 30 years or so. If you don't know, it is a story of John Krakauer, who was a journalist, who was going to write a story for Outside Magazine about the commercialization of climbing Mount Everest. And one of the stipulations he put on says, I actually want to climb Mount Everest and I'm going to do this story. And there was a disaster on the summit of Mount Everest, and a number of people died. And again, if you like nonfiction, I highly recommend picking up this book because it is just a searing portrait of people driven to do something insanely dangerous like climb Mount Everest. And the last book that I read was, again, a woman in translation, of The Little Old Lady Who Broke All the Rules by Catherine Engelman Soundberg. And this is a cozy mystery translated from the Swedish about a woman who is 79 who decides to start a life of crime because the life in her retirement home is so dull and boring and unpleasant. She decides that life in prison would be better. I'm not going to spoil too much. She does commit a fabulous art theft. She goes to prison and discovers that prison isn't quite all it's meant to be. And I always thought Swedish prisons were supposed to be so fun. And that is all that I read for August. For September, I am in a number of groups. I am reading The Name of the Rose in a Voxer group. I am reading A Confederacy of Dunces, and again in a Voxer group for our humor group. On my own, I am reading a nonfiction account called Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town by Barbara Danmick. She is more famous for her journalism about North Korea, but this is about life in a Tibetan town. Now I'm only about a third of the way through with it. I am enjoying it. It's a little dry in places. It can be a little more exciting, but I think I'll finish that. And later in this month, I am going to go to Anthony Trollope again and do the second of the Barchester Towers, which is just called Barchester Towers. I'm also going to do an audible book, a fantasy book. No, I do not do a lot of fantasy usually, but this is The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. And he has a very dark fantasy. There's not a lot of magic on the surface, or at least not a flashy magic. And for fantasy, the flashy magic is what puts me off. I like the magic more seedy and in the background, and that's what this guy does very well. And as for that, I'm leaving it open because on the 17th, I take possession of my new home, and then I get to unbox all the items that we had shipped from Washington. So thank you very much for watching, and have a good day. Goodbye.